Hello, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Sit down, please. I'd like to speak English today too, to improve my speaking skill. Let's get it started. Today, it is October 10th, 2023. It's on Tuesday and sunny outside. How are you spending Tuesday? Do you have a work or school today? Or have you already finished working or studying at school? Or have you got a day off today? I actually feel a little sleepy. I actually sleepy. I'm actually sleepy a little. I feel sleepy a little bit. A little tired as I was, I gathered my last power to finish the job, duty, task. I saw a few students playing in the ground. Whenever I see some students playing outside, I get fine. I can absorb power from them. I can absorb energy from them. I have not only a few things but also many things. There might be a few people who can understand what you have said. There might be a few people who can understand what you have said. A few pieces of paper were left on my desk with a message. I saw a few pieces of paper flowing on the road after the storm blast blew. I saw a few pieces of paper scattered on the road. I saw some pieces of leaflets scattered on the road. I'm sure that everybody must have experienced a few once in a life experiences. I'm sure everybody must have experienced a few fatal imminence. I'm sure everybody must have went through a few touching moments, maybe by listening to music or movie. I'm sure most of you must have gone through a few momentum moments. Memorable moments. I'm sure everybody must have gone through a few memorable moments in the course of life, in the process of life. A few passengers in the plane were from other countries, nations. There are always a few people who violate the rules. There are always a few people sleeping during the class. There are always a few people who violate the school rules, policies, compliances, and so on. There are always a few people who violate the compliance. There are always a few people who violate school rules. There are always a few people who violate the law. There are always a few people who violate the law. There are always a few people who violate the law. There are always a few people who breach the law. Breach. Infringe on the law. Intrude on the law. Intrude on the law. Is there a little water left? Is there any energy left in your body? Is there energy left? Is there a little energy left? I have a little energy. I have a little energy left. Every time I come back from work, I have little energy left, but this time I still have a little energy left. So maybe I can work on my lovely study. Do you still have energy left? Do you still have a little energy left? We still leave a little energy for the cleaning, which is our routine conducted at last before leaving the office. We should leave the last energy a little to finish the last spot, the last duty of cleaning. We should leave a little energy, enough to work on the cleaning. There is a little wine left in the bottle. There is a little whiskey left in the bottle. There is a little water left in the bottle. There is a little money left in my wallet. There is a little money in my wallet. There is a little hope for the recovery from my disease as early as next week. There is a little hope of the recovery of my disease. There is a little hope that I can be released from the hospital as early as next week. Quite a few passengers are expected to take the flight. Quite a few people are expected to gather around the Shibuya station on Halloween Day. Quite a few people are expected to flock to the station. Quite a few people are expected to come out of the arena as soon as the game ends. So it's better to buy the train ticket beforehand, in advance. Quite a few audiences are expected to come out of the arena the moment the game ends. So it is sensible to buy the ticket for the return in advance. So it's advisable for you to buy the returning train ticket in advance before it congested. Quite a few people are expected to walk towards the train station as soon as the game ends. So it's advisable for you to buy the train ticket for the return in advance before it gets into congestion. She drank quite a little alcoholic beverage. She drank quite a little of wine, beer, and other alcohol, enough to make her crazy. Quite a little alcohol was detected from his body. Quite a little alcohol was detected from the driver, enough to lead to the car accident. Quite a little alcohol was detected from his body. Quite a little alcohol was detected from his body. Quite a little alcohol was detected from his body. Quite a few people are predicted to come out of the arena as soon as the game ends. So it is advisable for us to buy the train ticket for the return in advance before it gets into the congestion. Quite a few people are predicted to come out of the arena and walk toward the train station as soon as the game ends. So it is advisable for us to buy the train ticket for the return beforehand, in advance, before it gets into congestion. Quite a few people are excited to see the Emperor on New Year's Day and Emperor's birthday. Quite a few people are excited to be able to go for foreign countries after the border measures have been lifted. Quite a few people are worried about dropping yen. Quite a few people are concerned about the dropping yen. Quite a few people are concerned about the dropping yen. Quite a few people are predicted to go out of the hall as soon as the live ends. So it is advisable, it is sensible for us to buy the train tickets for the return in advance before it gets into congestion. Quite a few people are expected to come out of the arena as soon as the game ends, so it is advisable for us to buy the train ticket for the return in advance now, before it gets into congestion. I can imagine a long queue waiting in front of the train ticket machine. unless you have the IC card, which is available for the train. Is having quite a few subscribers on social networking service important? Is having quite a few subscribers on social networking service important, essential, indispensable? Is having quite a few followers on social networking service important? Which is more important for you? Having quite a few subscribers or followers on social networking service, or having a fulfilled real life? Which is more important for you? Having quite a few subscribers or followers on social networking service, or having a couple of close friends, real friends. Quite a little rain is expected tomorrow. Quite a little rain is expected tomorrow. Quite a little rain is anticipated tomorrow. Quite a little rain is predicted tomorrow. Quite a little rain is guessed tomorrow. Quite a little rain is predicted tomorrow. How dare you could spend quite a little money on gambling? How dare you could spend quite a little money and time on gambling? How dare you could spend quite a little money on the watch? How dare you could spend quite a little time by doing nothing? How dare you could spend quite a little time by waiting in the line for more than 3 hours? I was stunned by the truth that quite a little food is thrown away every day. I was astonished at the truth that quite a little food is thrown away every day. I was taken by surprise by the truth that quite a little food is thrown away every day. I was stunned by the truth that quite a little food is thrown away every day. I was surprised at the truth that quite a little food is thrown away every day. Having quite a few things to do will make you have stress, maybe. Having quite a few things to do is one of the reasons why we feel stressed. Having quite a few things. Having quite a few things to do is one of the reasons why we feel stressed. Do you have quite a few things to do at work? Do you have quite a few tasks at work? Do you have quite a few tasks at work? No, I don't have quite a few things to be done at work, but I have a few things. I saw quite a few people waiting in the queue in front of the store. opened recently. I saw quite a few people waiting in the queue in front of the ramen shop, which recently opened. Quite a little money moves in the gambling on a daily basis. Quite a little rain has been expected in a day. Quite a little rain is expected tomorrow. Quite a little rain is expected tomorrow. Quite a little rain is anticipated tomorrow. Quite a little food is thrown away every day. Quite a little money is spent every day. She drank quite a little beer. She drank quite a little beer. At first, I couldn't believe his routine on Sunday, that he drinks quite a little beer, as much as 5 cans of beer. How dare you could spend quite a little money on gambling? How dare you can spend quite a little money on such a thing? Quite a little of money, quite a little money, quite a little water, quite a little wine, quite a little money. Quite a little money seems to have moved in the event. Quite a little money seems to have been handed down to the politician illegally. Quite a little money seems to have passed out to the politician illegally in the meeting behind the scenes. Quite a little money seems to have handed in to the politician behind the scenes in the meeting. Quite a little money. Quite a little money seems to have handed in to the politician behind the scenes in the meeting. Quite a little money seems to have passed out to the participants in the meeting illegally in order to get votes from the voters. Only a few people will keep doing one thing forever. Only a few people will meet what they have said till the end. Only a few people will keep a word of what they have said, promised, and so on. Only a few people will reach the level in every field. Only a few people will reach the level admitted by the professional. Only a few people will reach the level, professional level. Only a few people will reach the level regarded as professional. Only a few people will reach the level viewed as professional. Only a few people will reach the level seen as professional. Only a few people will reach the level regarded as professional. Because only a few people can continue doing effort in the same field for a long time, enough to be professionals. Only a few people can reach the level regarded as professional, because only a few people can make the effort enough to be professional. Only a few people can reach the level regarded as professional, because only a few people can make such a long effort enough to be professionals. Since there was only a little money left in my wallet, I gave up buying the merchandise. Because there was only a little money left in my wallet, I gave up buying the product on the way home. And some people go to Tokyo for making their dreams come true with only a little hope. Some people go to Tokyo or urban cities in order to make their dreams come true with a little hope, with only a little hope, money, and so on. I hope they can make their dreams come true. Only a few people can pass the entrance examination of the University of Tokyo because of the difficulty of the examinations. Only a few people can hit the lottery. Only a few people can hit the lottery. Only a few people can enter the big companies. Only a few people in the world can speak the language spoken in the village. Only a few people in the world can speak the unique language at the risk of extinction. Only a few people in the world can speak the language at the risk of extinction, on the verge of extinction, on the brink of extinction. There are some languages in the world on the brink of extinction, on the verge of extinction. Only a few people can speak. There are some languages out there in the world, only a few people can speak. There are some languages only a few people can speak, which are on the verge of extinction, some of which are on the verge of extinction, on the brink of extinction. Only a few people might succeed in achieving breakthroughs. Only a few people can achieve breakthroughs. Only a few people can accomplish breakthroughs in a certain field, in a particular field. Because I am super sensitive and weak to alcoholic beverages. Only a little of only a little of alcoholic beverages, only a little of alcohol uh, can make my skin so red. Because I am so weak to alcohol, only a little alcohol can make me so red. Only a few sparks can initiate the fire, so please be careful. Only a few sparks of the fire can lead to the fire. Only a few sparks can lead to fire. Maybe all of us felt happy with only a little money when we were kids. Trying to be satisfied with only a little happiness might be the true satisfaction. Trying to be satisfied with what we have currently. Trying to be satisfied with only a little happiness on a daily basis might be the true satisfaction. Only a few people might have noticed about a subtle change. Only a little water is left in the river due to the drought. Only a little water is left in the river due to the drought. Only a little water is left on the river. It's almost dried. Enough to be able to work. And there are some times when there is only a little water on the in the river, enough to be able to work. When it is low tide. When it is low tide, only a little water exists in the river. We can almost work. When it is low tide, only a little water exists in the river, enough to be able to work. When it is low tide, only a little water exists in the river, enough to be able to walk. The water level is as high as your ankle. When it is low tide, there is only a little water left in the river. The water level is as high as your ankle. So you can see how shallow the water level is. Only a few people might have noticed the subtle change, faint change. She made only a few mistakes, almost perfect. She made only a few mistakes on the examination. She made only a few mistakes on the performance. she reproduced the music sheet perfectly, like a robot. She made only a few mistakes on the music sheet. She reproduced the music sheet almost perfectly. Sorry, I have only a few minutes to go. I have only a few minutes to go. I have only a few minutes to go. I have only a few minutes left. I only have a few minutes break. I have only a few break time. I have only a few minutes for lunch break. As short as 5 minutes. I have only a few minutes for break for lunch time. I have only a few minutes for lunch break. Some teacher get angry at only a few mistakes made by students. Some teachers are super irritated by only a few mistakes made by students. When it is low tide, there is only a little water in the river, enough to be able to walk. When it is low tide, there is only a little water left in the river, as high as your ankle. When it is low tide, the water level is as high as your ankle. Only a little water exists in the river. Only a little water exists in the river. Only a little water is left. Only a little water is left. Only a little water is left. Only a little water is left in the river. Only a little alcohol makes me red. I can become red by only a little alcohol. I used to devote only a few minutes to doing what I'm interested in the busy schedule. You can add only a little sugar in the cuisine. Few people are like me. Few people are like me. A few people have the same interest in me as me. Few people have the same interest as me. Few people have the same interest I have. Few people have the same interest as mine. Few people can enter the university. The most difficult university, I mean. I guess few students could understand the lecture made by the professor today. I predict few students could understand, apprehend the lecture made by the professor today. A few people in the world can understand the theory suggested by the physician. A few cuisines served in this restaurant are cheap. Most of them are more than 10,000 yen. So please be careful when you before you enter. Little time was left when I arrived there. So I almost performed without any rehearsal, or practice, or preparation. Little time was left when I arrived there before the performance. So I performed with almost no practice or preparation. I could understand little. I usually can eat little. I usually can eat little in the morning. I sometimes skip eating breakfast. I think it can be said to many of you. But I know it is important to have breakfast. I guess a few people meet what they have declared on the new year. A few people can enter the most difficult university. A few people can eat the menu served in the restaurant. Few food fighters could succeed in eating all of the menus served in the restaurant. Few food fighters could eat all of the menu for the challenge. Few food fighters could finish eating all of the menu. A few food fighters could finish eating all of the menu in time. A few food fighters could eat all of the menu in time. Few positions are my interest. Few positions are my interest. A few things can satisfy me. Few things are my interest. A few things are my taste. Few fashions 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 are my taste. A few things I sold at the second-hand shop were expensive. Few things I sold at the second-hand shop were sold for a fee, meaning most of them were sold for free. There were few people were tourists in the tourist spot during the pandemic, which was such a strange and scary scenery, because the tourist spot was usually crowded with tourists. I could find few people were tourists in the tourist spot during the pandemic. There were a few people in the early morning, so I thought it good to visit there in the early morning to escape from congestion. I could take a picture without people. There were few tourists on the famous street during the pandemic. There were few tourists on the famous street in the early morning, so I thought it a good timing to take pictures without people. If you want to take a picture, if we want to take pictures without people. I think many of you have little time for study or practice after working hard on a daily basis. I had little time for studying after coming back from school, because I used to devote myself to the club activity until late at night, like 7 or 8 o'clock, and it was almost 9 o'clock p.m. when I got home, and I was exhausted enough to fall asleep immediately. Although little hope was left, the entrepreneur overturned the prediction made by 99% people and led to the current success. Although little hope for the recovery was left, the entrepreneur upset the prediction and led the company to the current success, which is thriving in the world. I have few friends. I have few friends. I have few friends. I don't have many friends. Do you have quite a few friends? Do you have quite a little time on weekdays? There are few things to satisfy me. There are few things to appeal me. There are few songs to appeal me. There are few artists enough to appeal to me. There are few songs to attract me recently. There are few things to satisfy me. There are few things to please me. There are few songs to make me touched. There are few songs enough to make me moved. There were few things to do in the place where I visited before. Since there were a few things to do, I was obliged, and there were no option but to practice my guitar. There were few things to do, so there were no selection but to practice my club activity. There were few things to do. So there were no options but to practice my guitar. There were no option but to practice my violin. There were few things to do in the countryside. There were no option but to devote myself to the club activity. Even after coming home, by researching with the videos. There were few things to do at home, so there were no options but to study. There were no selections but to study. A few stewards deal in the super expensive products. A few shops deal in VHS players. Maybe, perhaps, presumably. A few shops open round the clock. Few shops open around the clock. Few shops open 24 hours. Few shops open for 24 hours. Few shops open for 24 hours. Few shops open round the clock. A few shops open round the clock. A few shops open round the clock. Around the clock. Few shops open round the clock. Few shops are open round the clock. Few shops are open around the clock. Few shops are open 24 hours. Few shops are open for 24 hours. Few shops are open for 24 hours. Few tasks have been completed yet. A pile of tasks have been completed yet. Few tasks have been completed yet. Few tasks left on the desk have been completed yet. I have completed a few of the tasks. I have completed a few tasks left on the desk. I saw a few tourists in the tourist spot in the early morning. I saw a few people in the early morning. I saw a couple of people strolling with their pet dogs. I saw a few tourists in the early morning on the street, I saw a couple of people, maybe locals, walking with pet dogs. I saw a few people in the early morning on the street. I saw a couple of people, maybe the locals, walking with their pet dogs. I have little money deposited in the bank. I wish my savings were as much as billionaires. I hope it will be made true by earning money with YouTube videos in the near future. I really hope so. A little time was left when I arrived at the hall, so I performed almost with no practice or preparation. When I arrived at the hall, little time was left for the preparation. So I got my performance started with almost no preparation. There is little time for lunch break. There is little time left for lunch break. I have to finish it within 15 minutes. It's like 3 minutes for me. There is little time left for my lunch break. Maybe most of you have 1 hour lunch break, right? There is little time left. There is little time left for the next flight. Since there was little time for the next train, we rushed to the platform and managed to get the train, managed to catch the train. Because there was a little time left for the train, we rushed to the platform and managed to get in the train. Because there was a little time left for the train, we rushed to the platform and managed to the train. Managed to get in the train, managed to catch the train. Because there was a little time left for the train, we rushed to the platform and managed to catch the train, fortunately. Because there was little time left for the train, we rushed to the platform and managed to catch the train, get in the train, take the train. A little money is needed to be satisfied, you know. Maybe messages from your friends can make you happy. A cup of coffee make you happy. Health can make you happy. Little money is needed to make you happy. There is little money left in my wallet. There is little money left in my wallet. I have no energy. I have little energy. I usually have little energy after coming back from work. Have you slept in the bathroom? Have you ever slept in the bathtub? I usually have little appetite in the morning. I usually have little appetite in the morning. I usually have little appetite in the morning. Little appetite did I have in the morning? I usually have little appetite. I usually have little appetite in the morning. 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 Some people go to urban cities in order to make their dreams come true with little hope and money. I have little money. I wish I were as rich as billionaire. I wish I had as much money as billionaires in bank account. When it is low tide, only little water exists in the river. I spent too little time for lunch break. I spent so little time for lunch. I spent very little time for lunch. There were very few people on the street in the early morning. There were very few people on the street in the early morning. There were so few people. On the street in the early morning. So I recommend you go there in the early morning if you wanna escape from congestion, crowds, and so on. There were very few people. There were very few people. There were so few people. There were so few people. There were so few people. There were too few people. There were very few people. There were very few people. There were too few people. There were so few people. There were very few people. There were too few people. There were so few people. There were very few people. There were too few people. There were so few people. There were very few people in the tourist spots during the pandemic. There were very few people in the tourist spot during the pandemic. There were so few people in the tourist spot during the pandemic. I have few little interest in hotel treats. I have so little interest in flowers. I have very little interest in flowers. Very few people will win the lottery. Very few people will win the first prize of the lottery. Too few people will win the first prize of the lottery. So few people will win the first prize of the lottery. Very few people will win the first prize of the lottery. Too few people will win the first prize of the lottery. So few people will win the first prize of lottery. Very few people will win the first prize of the lottery. Too few people will win the first prize of the lottery. So few people will win the first prize of the lottery. Very few people will earn money in the long run from gambling. Too few people will earn money in the long run from gambling. So few people will earn money in the long run from gambling. Very few people can eat the menu served in the restaurant within the time. Too few people can eat all of the menu served in the restaurant within the limited time. So few people can eat all of the menus served in the restaurant within the limited time. So few things are my interest. Too few things are my interest. Very few things are my interest. Very few things are my interest. Too few things are my interest. So few things are my interest. Very few things are my interest. Too few things are my interest. So few things are my interest. Very few students could understand the lecture conducted by the professor about relativity. Too few students could understand, comprehend, apprehend, figure out the lecture. I guess so few students could understand the lecture. So few tourists were observed on the street in the early morning. Very few tourists were observed in the early morning on the street. Too few tourists were observed on the street in the early morning. I saw very few tourists on the street in the early morning. I saw too few tourists on the street in the early morning. I saw so few tourists on the street in the early morning. I saw very few tourists on the street in the early morning. I saw too few tourists on the street in the early morning. I saw so few tourists on the street in the early morning. Very few tourists were seen on the street in the early morning. Too few tourists were seen on the street in the early morning. So few tourists were seen in the early morning on the street. Very few tourists were seen on the street in the early morning. Too few tourists were seen on the street in the early morning. So few tourists were seen on the street in the early morning. So few things were available at the convenience store. Too few things were available at the convenience store. So few things were available at the convenience store. So few industries are already without predecessors. Too few industries are already without predecessors. So few industries are already without predecessors. I think, I suppose, I presume, I assume. So few people can continue doing one thing till the end. I assume that too few people can continue doing until they achieve breakthrough. I assume that so few people can achieve breakthrough through endless effort. Very few things were sold for better price. Too few things were sold for good prices. So few things were sold for good prices. Very few things were left in the fridge. Too few things were left in the fridge. So few things were left in the fridge. There was very few things in the refrigerator. There were too few things in the refrigerator. There were so few things in the refrigerator. There were very few things in the refrigerator. There were too few things in the refrigerator. There were so few things in the refrigerator. There were very few things in the fridge. There were too few things in the freezer. There were so few things in the freezer. Very few of the textbooks were read by the student. Too few of the textbooks were read by the student. So few textbooks put in the shelf were read by the student. They were almost like a decoration. Very few people can understand my ideas. Too few people can understand my ideas. So few people can understand my ideas. Very few people can understand my ideas. Too few people can understand my ideas. So few people can understand my ideas. Very few people understand the theory. Too few people understand the theory. So few people understand the theory. Very few people understand the theory. Too few people understand the theory. So few people understand the theory. Very few musicians are admitted by the person who is particular about sound. Too few musicians are admitted by the person who is particular about sound. So few musicians are satisfied. So few musicians satisfy the person who is particular about the sound. I guess, as of now, very few people in the world have more knowledge than that of AI. I guess too few people have more knowledge than AIs. I guess so few people have more knowledge than AI as of now. So few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. And very few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. So few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. Very few people can run 100 meters in 10 seconds. Very few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. Too few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. So few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. Can you? Very few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. Too few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. So few people can run 100 meters within 10 seconds. Very little time was left for my lunch break. Too little time is left for my lunch break. So little time is adopted for my lunch break. And very little time is secured for my lunch break. Too little time is secured for my lunch break. So little time is secured for my lunch break. Very little time is secured for my lunch break. Too little time is secured for my lunch break. So little time is secured for my lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. I have very little time for lunch break. I have too little time for lunch break. How many minutes or hours do you have for lunch break? How long do you have for lunch break? How long do you have for your lunch break? How long do you have for your lunch break? I have little time for lunch break. I have very little time for lunch break. I have too little time for lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. I have very little time. I have very little time for lunch break. I have too little time for lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. I have very little time for lunch break. I have too little time for lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. Little. I have very little time for lunch break. I have very little time. Very little time. Very little time. I have very little time for lunch break. I have very little time for lunch break. I have very little time for lunch break. I have too little time for lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. I have very little time for lunch break. I have too little time for lunch break. I have so little time for lunch break. There is very little water left when it is low tide in the river, in the Seto Inland Sea, in the sea, a part of Seto Inland Sea, I think. Very little water is left in the river when it is low tide. So little water is left in the river when it is low tide. There is very little water. There is very little water in the river when it is low tide. There is too little water in the river when it is low tide. There is so little water in the river when it is low tide. There is very little time, very little water in the ocean, in the river when it is low tide. There was very little water in the river when I went there. When I visited there, there was too little water in the river. When I visited, there was so little water in the river. There was very little water. There was too little water. There was so little water. There was very little water. There was too little water. There was so little water. There was very little water. There was very little water. There was very little water. Very little water. Very little water. Very little water. There was very little water. Very little water. Very little water in the river. There was too little water. Too little water. There was so little water. There was very little food in the fridge. There was too little water in the bottle. There was so little water in the bottle. There was very little food in the refrigerator. There was very little food and drinks in the refrigerator. There was too little food. There was too little food in the fridge. There was so little food in the fridge, not the bridge. There was very little space for me in the elevator, so I gave up taking the elevator, but instead I took the stairs down to the floor. There was too little space for me. There was so little space for me. There was very little space for me in the elevator, so I gave up and instead took the stairs to the downstairs. There was too little space for me in the elevator, so I gave up and took the stairs instead. There was so little space for me in the in the elevator, so I took the stairs to the downstairs instead. There was very little space in the elevator, so I took the stairs to the down floor instead. There was very little space in the elevator, so I took the stairs instead. There was so little space for me in the elevator, so I gave up and took the stairs instead to the ground floor. There was very little space in the refrigerator, so I threw some of them away. There was too little space in my room, so I decided to throw some of them away. There was so little space in my room, so I threw some of them away. Okay, I will finish speaking here. Thank you for watching. See you next time. See you!